Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone. If you're a regular viewer of our Crimes of the Week series, you might remember that a little earlier this year, we released a couple of compilations of some of the dumbest criminals in crime stories that we covered so far this year. Because so many of you told us that you enjoyed these compilations, we promised that we'd make the videos quarterly so that we could include as many of these bizarre and entertaining cases as possible. While we know that we still technically have a little ways to go until we're officially at the halfway point of the year, both of us are actually out of town this week for a much-needed vacation, so we decided to put out this one a little bit early rather than simply not releasing anything this week. Be sure to look out for another one of these videos near the end of the week that will be covering cases exclusively from our Crimes of the Week International series. One thing to keep in mind is that these segments have not been edited since they appeared in their respective lists, so references to specific days of the week as well as other small details may no longer apply. That being said, if you're missing regular Crimes of the Week though, don't worry. We'll be back next week with another video covering all new stories. With that out of the way, let's get to the video. A Louisiana man who was in the process of joining his local sheriff's department is instead being held in one of its jails this week after he was allegedly caught trying to deliver weed to an inmate. According to reports, 20-year-old Derek Webb had recently been working for the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office as a deputy recruit and was on his way to joining the force. However, his ambitions came to an end this week after he was caught with 2 bags of marijuana, which he was allegedly trying to smuggle into a local jail to deliver to an inmate. Webb reportedly admitted to what he had done during questioning, and said that he had actually carried out the crime successfully 2 times previously. On those occasions, he had delivered the marijuana and was paid by a third party outside the jail. On April 5th, Webb was fired from his job and was booked into the Orleans Justice Center, where he was charged with 3 counts each of possession with intent to distribute, introducing contraband in prison, and malfeasance in office. This week, representatives from the Las Vegas Police Department announced that they had arrested and charged an 18-year-old man after a backpack containing his homework was allegedly found at the scene of a deadly home invasion. According to reports, the incident began just after 2 p.m. on March 25th, when a group of 4 armed suspects broke into a house on the 6400 block of Bright Nimbus Avenue and demanded that the occupants hand over cash. Inside at the time was 24-year-old Natalie Mondley and her female roommate. During the break-in, the roommate was forced into a closet, where she was repeatedly asked what was kept inside the safe there. At some point, a shootout began between Natalie and the other suspects, ending when Natalie was struck and killed in one of the home's bedrooms. After allegedly stealing $5,000 from the residence, the 4 suspects left the house and tried to flee in a white Mercedes sedan. However, at the same time, Natalie's boyfriend returned home from a shopping trip and saw what was happening. He followed the suspects a short distance in his own vehicle before ramming into the back of their car and sending it crashing into a wall near the house. The suspects reportedly got out of the car and fired several shots at the boyfriend before running away on foot. When police arrived at the scene and began an investigation, they were able to recover 2 significant items of interest from the white Mercedes: the $5,000 the suspects had allegedly stolen from the victims, as well as a backpack containing a Clark County School District-issued Chromebook and a notebook full of math homework. Written at the top right corner of the schoolwork was the name Kamari Oliver, as well as the words 5th period. When investigators did a little more digging, sure enough, they learned that Oliver was an 18-year-old Clark County School District student. Not only that, but he had unexcused absences from the last 2 periods of his high school classes on the day that the crime took place. Oliver was arrested on March 28th while at school. At the time, he had injuries to his face that he claimed were from a fight that he had been in. Las Vegas police say that they were able to obtain surveillance video showing Oliver disposing of a handgun near the crime scene, and that they also received a call from a witness who said that they had picked up Oliver in the area shortly after the home invasion and killing. Oliver was subsequently charged with murder, robbery, burglary, and kidnapping in connection with the case. While the status of the other 3 suspects allegedly involved in the crime is unclear, it said that the perpetrators are 2 men and a woman. Las Vegas police now believe that the home invasion was targeted, likely because Natalie's boyfriend is known for selling high-end jewelry on Instagram. The female suspect is said to be known to the victims and was at their house the day before the crime. At the time of this recording, the situation is still under investigation. Police in the city of Bellevue, Florida say that a 16-year-old boy is dead this week after he was shot by one of his friends while they were taking turns putting on a bulletproof vest and firing a gun at one another. According to reports, just after 7 p.m. on April 3rd, police were called to a residence on the 10,400 block of Southeast 52nd Court. When they arrived at the scene, they found 16-year-old Chris Leroy Broad Jr. suffering from a gunshot wound to the chest. The teenager was rushed to the hospital, though once there, he sadly died as a result of his injuries. When police interviewed 2 of the friends that had been with Chris at the time, 17-year-old Joshua Vining and Colton Whitler, they allegedly initially lied to officers about what had happened. Whitler reportedly told investigators that his house had been shot up by random attackers. However, a third friend who was also present at the time, 18-year-old Evan Vowell, gave a far different explanation of what had led to Chris's death. He said that Chris and Vining had been playing a bizarre and dangerous game at the time of the incident, where the 2 were taking turns shooting at each other while wearing a bulletproof vest. The so-called game had started when Vining allegedly produced the gun and vest and asked his friends if they had ever seen anyone get shot while wearing body armor before. According to police, they concluded that Val was the one telling the truth after he handed over undisclosed video evidence that backed up his story. On April 7th, Vining and Whitler were both arrested in connection with their friend's death. Vining was arrested for aggravated manslaughter of a child with a firearm, while Whitler was arrested for providing false information to law enforcement. It's said that both teenagers are being charged as adults.
Authorities in Flagler County, Florida say that a 57-year-old man was arrested and charged this week after he pretended to be an undercover DEA agent in order to get a discount at a fast food restaurant. According to reports, the situation took place on April 11th when a man named Jesse Stover went to a Wendy's location in the city of Bunnell. Upon ordering his food, he requested the customary 50% discount for police officers and was asked by the location's manager to see some credentials. Apparently, Stover quickly flashed what appeared to be a badge, but did so quickly enough that it made the manager suspicious enough to ask for a closer look. Immediately after the manager requested to see the badge again, Stover reportedly became argumentative, claiming that he was an undercover DEA agent. He also threatened to report the manager and employees at the restaurant to Wendy's corporate office. The argument continued for some time until the employees called 911. When police arrived at the scene, it's alleged that Stover immediately changed his tune, denying that he ever claimed to be a police officer or a federal agent. When he was searched by the responding officers, they quickly discovered that the badge that Stover reportedly flashed at the Wendy's manager was a concealed weapon permit. Stover was arrested at the scene and was charged with falsely impersonating an officer. According to reports, he has since been released from jail on a $2,500 bond.
Authorities in Ouachita Parish, Louisiana say that they recently arrested a 35-year-old woman after she accidentally sent her 4-year-old child to daycare with meth and other drugs in her lunch bag. According to reports, the incident took place on April 5th when employees at the daycare center in West Monroe called state police to report the disturbing contents of one of their students' lunch bags. Inside the bag, staff had found a gram of meth, half a Xanax bar, and 5.5 doses of the sedative clonazepam. Police soon tracked down the 4-year-old's mother, 35-year-old Jennifer Wise, who admitted to purchasing the drugs found in the lunch bag a day earlier. Wise said that she had somehow misplaced the drugs and had actually been looking for them. A search of her residence yielded 9 more grams of meth, as well as digital scales and plastic baggies allegedly used for drug dealing. Wise was arrested and is now facing 4 felony narcotics charges as well as 2 misdemeanors. Authorities in the city of Belfast, Maine, say that they have made an arrest in a bizarre trespassing case this week after a drunk suspect tried to hide from police in plain sight by covering himself with a blanket. According to reports, the incident began at around 9:30 p.m. on May 1st, when police were called to the Admiral Ocean Inn with a report of a disturbance caused by a drunken man. When they arrived at the scene, they identified the man as Philip Delude and learned that he had been bothering guests at the inn. Delude was escorted off of the property by police and was informed that if he returned, he would be placed under arrest. It seemed like that was the end of the incident until about 3 hours later, when officers were conducting a sweep of the inn's parking lot to make sure that everything was okay, and spotted something strange outside of one of the rooms. It turned out to be Delude, who was sitting on a chair. Despite being in plain sight, he had thrown a blanket over himself as if to hide the fact that he was there. Understandably, Delude's laughable attempt to conceal himself did not work on the officers, and he was placed under arrest for criminal trespass and violation of bail conditions. In a subsequent Facebook post about the incident, the police wrote, quote, "Here at Belfast Police Department, we have seen some crafty ways of hiding from the police. This, unfortunately, is not one of them." Underneath the post, multiple users joked about Delude's childlike choice of hiding place, with some saying that the whole thing seemed like something out of an episode of Scooby-Doo. Another user replied, "He almost got away with it." Authorities in Chesterfield County, South Carolina, say that a wrong number landed a 31-year-old man in jail this week when the mix-up led to him unknowingly trying to sell drugs and a gun to a local sheriff's deputy. According to reports, the incident began sometime on May 9th, when 31-year-old Tondavian Wilson texted a number that he evidently thought belonged to a person that he was trying to sell marijuana and a handgun to. Pictures of the items were allegedly included in the texts, as well as prices for each. Unbeknownst to Wilson, however, he had texted the wrong number, and instead of going to his desired recipient, he had actually sent the messages to an officer with the local Chesterfield County Sheriff's Office. The officer replied to Wilson's texts, and after some back and forth, was reportedly sent an address in the town of Chiragh where they could meet up to complete the transaction. That afternoon, deputies arrived at the residence that Wilson had sent and found him in possession of 90 grams of marijuana, as well as the gun he was allegedly trying to sell. Needless to say, Wilson was quite surprised by the whole situation, having no idea that he had texted the wrong number. He was arrested at the scene and is now facing a number of charges, including possession with intent to distribute within proximity of a school/playground and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. A story that is equal parts bizarre and disgusting was reported out of the city of St. Petersburg, Florida this week, where authorities say that a 57-year-old woman threw a bucket of urine on her neighbor after she became furious with him over his pet chicken. According to reports, the situation unfolded on the night of May 8th, when 57-year-old Christine Turman got into a fight with her neighbor Lawrence Stenzel at the Palm Haven Mobile Home Park. The argument allegedly began when Turman got frustrated because Stenzel's pet chicken had been, quote, pooping on her back patio. The dispute between the two neighbors escalated when Turman allegedly decided to one-up Stenzel in the war over bodily functions when she went inside, grabbed a bucket of urine, and proceeded to throw it on him. Stenzel responded by calling police, who showed up just after 10:30 p.m. and placed Turman under arrest for misdemeanor battery. While there, police also ended up arresting Turman's 59-year-old boyfriend, Kevin Avery, after he allegedly decided to threaten Stenzel right in front of the officers. According to reports, Turman has since been released from jail after posting $500 bond. As a final note, in case you were wondering, reports do not mention why Turman had a bucket of urine just lying around her house and apparently at the ready at the time of the incident, nor did they state whose urine was actually in the bucket. Authorities in Olmsted County, Minnesota say that a 53-year-old woman is in custody this week after she tried to flee from police who attempted to pull her over, only to become trapped in 150 feet of freshly poured cement. According to reports, the bizarre situation began just after 4:30 p.m. on May 16th, when a police officer in the town of Rochester noticed a woman blow through a red light in her vehicle while yelling through a bullhorn. Apparently, the 53-year-old woman in question was already well known to police by this point, as over the last few days, she had gotten into the annoying habit of driving down the street in her vehicle and screaming about religion from the same bullhorn. Needless to say, authorities had received plenty of complaints. However, when the officer attempted to initiate a traffic stop after witnessing the woman run the red light, she refused to stop, and instead, she took off. Because Rochester police apparently have a policy of not initiating vehicle chases unless a suspect is an immediate danger to the public, the 53-year-old was allowed to more or less go on her way for the time being. That being said, it didn't take long for her to find herself in trouble again, as witnesses observed her continuing to run red lights and drive erratically. At about 5:26 p.m., the woman's ridiculous behavior caught the attention of another Rochester police officer, who also attempted to conduct a traffic stop. Once again, the 53-year-old woman accelerated and tried to escape, though this time, she wouldn't make it quite as far. After driving toward Broadway Avenue, the woman crashed through a number of construction barricades, sending her sailing into about 150 feet of freshly poured concrete. While the woman continued to try and drive her way out of the quagmire, the concrete was victorious, and the 53-year-old remained trapped until she could be placed under arrest. According to the team in charge of pouring the concrete that the woman ruined, it's estimated that she did about $30,000 to $40,000 worth of damages. She has now been charged with 2 counts of fleeing police in a motor vehicle, 1 count of first-degree damage of property, and 1 count of driving a motor vehicle without a license. Perhaps most importantly of all, it's said that following the 53-year-old's arrest, she was also taken for a psych evaluation. Authorities in Wichita, Kansas say that they have identified the culprit behind a truly gross crime this week after a woman reportedly defecated in a local beauty store, causing damage to product. According to reports, the incident began on May 10th when the female suspect entered a beauty supply store in the 2200 block of East 21st Street. After walking around the store for a bit, the woman defecated in one of the aisles before taking off. In a subsequent post to social media about the case, Wichita police stated that the bowel movement was, quote, significant enough that 8 wigs were destroyed as a result. While the identity of the suspect that many have jokingly referred to as the poopatrator or public enemy number 2 remained a mystery for several days, police now say that thanks to surveillance footage taken of the crime and tips from concerned citizens, she has been successfully identified. However, that information has yet to be shared with the public. Police also say they have yet to uncover the motive behind the incident, suggesting that they believe the defecation was intentional. As for the surveillance footage of the crime, police were nice enough not to post it, jokingly saying, quote, "For the good of you all, we are not posting the footage of the offending fecal assault." At the time of this recording, it's unclear what, if any, criminal charges the woman could be facing. Authorities in Martin County, Florida say that a local woman is facing numerous charges this week after she led police on a reckless high-speed chase that ended with her throwing a rubber snake at an officer. According to reports, the incident began sometime on May 18th, when a motorcycle officer with the Martin County Sheriff's Department flipped on his lights to initiate a traffic stop on a vehicle. As he did so, he noticed that a blue pickup truck that wasn't the vehicle he initially intended to pull over began driving erratically and started speeding up in order to get away. Upon noticing the driver's suspicious behavior, the motorcycle officer turned his attention to the pickup truck, which continued to accelerate to speeds between 80 and 100 miles per hour. When the officer got close to the truck, things escalated further, when the woman behind the wheel deliberately tried to crash into him. The officer reportedly had to jump off of his bike in order to avoid being hit. A short time later, 2 police cruisers joined the chase as the pickup truck began to speed through the village of Indiantown. Once again, the female driver attempted to crash into both of the officers' vehicles, driving recklessly the entire time. The chase finally came to an end after the female driver hit yet another vehicle, this time a truck that was occupied by 3 civilians. The impact of the crash caused the victim's truck to roll over, though thankfully all of them suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Even after the female suspect was forced to come to a stop, though, she wasn't willing to go down without a fight. The first officer to approach her had a rubber snake thrown at them, which they initially believed was real. The woman was tased and then was placed under arrest. She has since been identified as 54-year-old Dawn LaPrade. LaPrade is now facing 4 counts of aggravated assault on a police officer, as well as fleeing arrest. Her bond has been set at $90,000, and the Martin County Sheriff's Office say that more charges could follow. Authorities in Polk County, Florida say that a 22-year-old woman landed herself in a whole mess of trouble this week after she flipped out over her order in a local McDonald's and ended up calling 911. According to reports, the situation began sometime on May 20th, when 22-year-old Tianis Jones went to pick up an online order from a McDonald's location in the city of Lakeland. The order was simple enough: a Happy Meal with a chocolate milkshake, a Filet-O-Fish, tea, and fries. When Jones arrived at the location and went through the drive-thru, she noticed that there was something wrong with her order. Employees told her that it was no problem and that she just needed to pull up to the 3rd window and they would help her figure it out. Instead, Jones ignored these instructions, parked her vehicle, and marched into the McDonald's, apparently intent on settling her grievances face to face. When Jones got inside, she reportedly got more and more angry with staff, despite their repeated attempts to fix her order and them even offering her a refund. Bizarrely, Jones got so frustrated that she eventually called 911, telling police that the employees at the store, quote, don't know how to run an effing McDonald's, and that they were trying to cheat her out of her money. Things escalated further when Jones went behind the counter and began throwing cups, condiments, and seemingly knocking over whatever else she could find. Her sister tried several times to de-escalate the situation and remove Jones from the store, but she refused. She did eventually go, but not before twerking on the way out. According to reports, Jones's sister and mother, who had accompanied her to the McDonald's, were so embarrassed by her behavior that they stayed behind after she left to help investigators. Jones was eventually arrested that evening on charges of burglary with assault, criminal mischief, disorderly conduct, and misuse of the 911 system. While the situation is certainly bizarre, if you ask us, the fact that Jones ordered a Filet-O-Fish should have been the first red flag. Seriously, who likes those things? Authorities in Prince George's County, Maryland say that a 37-year-old man is facing charges this week after he was accused of posing as a member of law enforcement, something that investigators say that he has been doing for quite some time. According to reports, for more than 15 years, 37-year-old Antoine William Tuckson has routinely tried to pass himself off as law enforcement, complete with elaborate costumes, weapons, and props. Investigators say that he has not stopped despite a lengthy criminal record and multiple prison sentences. Tuckson's most recent foray into fake law enforcement was reportedly uncovered in March, when he called local authorities to a restaurant in Prince George's County where he was working as an armed security guard. When officers arrived at the scene, Tuckson informed them that he had tried to detain 2 of the restaurant's patrons who had disputed their bill. However, police were far more interested in Tuckson, who was carrying handcuffs, a taser, and other police gear, and was accompanied by a dog wearing a, quote, police-style vest. Tuckson was also carrying a handgun, something he was prohibited from doing as a convicted felon. In order to explain that situation, Tucson apparently identified himself as a Deputy United States Marshal to the Prince George's County Police Department. Needless to say, the responding officers were skeptical of Tucson's claims and placed him under arrest. It was then that things got even stranger, as the 37-year-old phoned a friend for help. That friend was a 40-year-old woman named Nigia Nicole Rich, who pretended to be Tucson's supervisor. Soon, Rich had arrived at the scene as well, and was also dressed in tactical gear, had handcuffs, a radio, a handgun, and even an expandable baton. Rich reportedly asked the officers who had arrested Tucson why they had taken a US Marshal into custody, and also told them that the dog he had was both an emotional support animal and a patrol dog. Police continued not to believe Rich and Tucson's stories, and Tucson was held in custody, and the dog was briefly taken by the county's Animal Services Division. A day later, Rich showed up at the Animal Services Division, and this time she posed as a US Marshal. An employee gave her possession of Tucson's dog. As detectives continued to follow up on the bizarre events, they were reportedly able to confirm their suspicions that Tucson and Rich were frauds. A search of Tucson's house revealed more guns that he was prohibited from owning, as well as numerous props he allegedly used to impersonate law enforcement, including flashing red and blue lights, fake identification and badges, and more tactical gear. On May 20th, both Tucson and Rich were arrested. According to reports, both of them are now facing charges of impersonating a federal officer. Additionally, Tucson has been charged for being a felon in possession of a firearm, and Rich has been charged with conspiracy to impersonate a federal officer. At the time of this recording, both suspects reportedly remain in custody. That's it for this edition of Crimes of the Week. If you enjoyed our video, don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Zone for more true crime content like this, making sure to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest releases. Thank you for watching.